So welcome everybody to the second hour of MindShifters Radio. Today is Tuesday, October 31st, 2023. And our call-in number is 563-999-3581. And press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. And we would love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. We'll give Michael a moment to dial in, pulling up the last of the plants, getting the gardens ready. It's supposed to drop down into the 20s for the next 4 nights. So the last production's on, and he's been outside most of the morning. I had physical therapy this morning, and that's going very well. And that's from where a few weeks ago I fell down the front hill and kind of jarred up my left side of my body. And it wasn't getting any better with the chiropractor, so decided to try physical therapy. So that is going very well. If you have any comments or questions during the show, we would love to hear from you. Dial in 563-999-3581 and press 1, and a little hand goes up, and I know that you want to talk. And so we would love to hear from you. Several people called in yesterday, and we weren't able to get to everybody. So if you were one of those people, press 1, and we will attempt to get to you first so that you have an opportunity to ask your question. And so if you go to our website, whyagain.org, and I have put in the notes for today the link to go to the support group tonight from MindShifters Academy. And so you can find that link there, or you can go to mindshiftersacademy.org and click on the Tuesday evening group. And I'm also pulling up some of the archive shows that he was referring to from the MindShifter podcast. So that'll be in the notes for today as well. Might make it a little bit easier for you to find the link and tap in. And Michael's just now coming in, so we'll give him just another moment. So what has resonated for you? We've talked about several things the last few days, and we'd like to hear from you. Has it resonated anything for you? Michael and I started watching a new series. Well, it's not a new series. We had actually seen the first seasons or so of The Choice. I think that's what it's called. And so we were watching that again last night, part where the disciples are choosing to follow Yeshua in his work and in his ministry. And it's really very well done. You can see the question marks in their faces, and when they're thinking, oh, what have I signed up for here, and can I do this? And so if you've never watched that, it's very well done. I'm trying to find the links, and I'll put that in the notes for today too. The Choice. So press 1. Let us hear which direction you would like for the show to go. Any questions? We went over 4 days to go over an article that was sent to Michael on whether we had free choice or not. We discussed that, and we had quite a few good questions come out of it. And so if that had triggered something for you and you didn't get around to asking your questions or placing your comment, that's one of the things we've been talking about. Yesterday, we talked about building brain cells. And then yesterday he talked a lot about the power person and addiction in order to adapt and survive. And that if effort is put into facing the trauma-based energies, then the addiction itself drops away. We've talked before that, if you're doing worksheets on anger, if you can stop and take a breath and look under the anger at what is the fear or what is the pain that underlies it, because anger is just another addiction, an anesthetic, to and get specific with what's actually going on for you, and then you'll have better opportunity to do the forgiveness work. And again, the forgiveness work is not about pardoning someone or letting them or yourself off the hook for what came up, but it is about going inside and looking at what is the upset. What did this event trigger for me? And it's always, when you're triggered, there's a goal that you hold. And the difference between the goal, the way you want it to be, and the way it is, that's the level of your stress. And the only way that you can alleviate that stress is to either achieve the goal or to cancel the goal. And, most of the time we talk about doing the wake-up sheets on negative feelings, like if you're fearful or angry or feel guilty or shame or whatever. But you can also do the worksheets on positive things. If you think something outside of you makes you happy, quote unquote, or brings you joy, it may trigger it, but that is inside of you. And if you are dependent upon something outside of you making you happy, and then something happens and all of a sudden that person's doing something that triggers something different than happiness, then your happiness goes away if you think that it is from outside of you as well. And so forgiveness is about removing the energies that we hold within so that we can stay connected to Source regardless of what's going on. We have the little story on our website about the rose and the butterfly. And they meet, they have a wonderful time, and then one day the butterfly flies away. And because the rose thinks that there's nothing greater than the love of that butterfly, when it uproots, the rose is going to die because it makes something else more important than staying connected to its source. And when we do that, when we think, that having certain goals met is our happiness, then we disconnect from love when we go to chase after whatever it is outside of us. And I see Michael has joined us, so I'm going to say welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart. Baby, it's cold outside. I've been out. Tonight we're supposed to go down to the mid-20s, so harvesting, I guess I could harvest probably 25 or 30 pounds of cherry tomatoes. They're still green, beautiful big plump ones that hopefully will ripen in the house, and we'll get to share their wonder. And in the meantime, chilly, but just cleaning all the tomato plants out of the garden and getting ready for winter tonight. Beyond that, the article that we actually shared a couple of versions of it, is now transformed into a whole different thing, but not finished yet. So we'll put that on hold until it develops a little further. A lot of other information, evidence coming into it, and so I'm having fun and consuming many hours, kind of putting together what will probably end up being an introduction to Why Is This Happening to Me Again, or perhaps a small book on its own. I'm not sure how it's going to come out, but it's about putting an end to suffering in the world. It's about time. It's about time. Probably one of the biggest pieces of evidence that we could quote to someone to prove how insane their perception is when they live in a world of everything that's going on in my life is everybody else's fault, is to just look at the fact that every person who's saying that has been through it 87 different times with 42 different people. I'll have people when they say, well, gee, here you are, you're 40. Do you remember that happened in your childhood? Oh, no, that never happened in my childhood. And then when we get into the conversation, they start describing how they were treated by nurse. Well, that sounds like exactly the story you told me about what happened with that other person last week. Oh, never thought of it that way. Yeah, I guess it is. Maybe I have been there every time it's happened. My God, maybe I'm involved. Am I a creator? Am I creating this? Absolutely. But how can what I do change another's action? Well, probably one of the first references that you'll find to the world of quantum physics. Well, maybe I shouldn't say that one of the first, but one of the earliest that I've become aware of. as I started working on this article. And it comes out of the mouth of this gentleman named Job. And this guy has been through hell and back. I mean, it's just horrific what he's been through. And here's what he said. For the thing I greatly feared has come upon me, and what I dreaded has happened to me. That, I would offer, is Job's first opening to the possibility of healing. You know, it's well known, let's say, for instance, in the area of alcoholics. You know, the alcoholic has got everybody else to blame. They've got such a perfect story. They've got it honed to a T that it's hard to refute. But if you look in all of the circles where they see people healing from the trauma, the self-induced and the other-induced trauma of alcoholism, you'll note that everybody says the first step is you've got to start to own that you've got a problem. Now, the person who lives in blame, you made me mad, you made me sad, you made me afraid. You know, there's no room in the mind. An interesting quote from Einstein came through as I was writing this little piece of it. He says, the theory you have about a thing determines what you can observe. The theory you have about a thing. There was a philosophical, what should we call him? A man whose doctorate was in philosophy. His name's Russell Hansen. And here's what he says. They talk about the power of the observer in philosophies, and he says observations vary from observer to observer with the amount of knowledge the observer brings with them. The veteran physicist looks at some apparatus and sees an X-ray tube. The neophyte, looking at the same place, at the same thing, observes a glass and metal instrument replete with wires, reflectors, screws, lamps, and push buttons. One man's observation is a fact about the thing, and the other is some information about the thing. Sadly, because in our current Western world, those who specialize in treatment of disease don't have the experience or the brain cells for healing in many cases. And that's why you get a person who starts on drug A in day 1, and then by day 16 he's on drug B, then he's on C, D, E, F, G, H. We had one gentleman in intensive back several years ago who, when I brought this topic up, went back into his room. We're in a small residential facility. Went back into his room and brought out literally a Walmart type, regular grocery bag, literally filled to the top with drugs. And that's what he's taking every day in order to survive. So if one looks at a set of symptoms with the eyes of treatment, they're kind of like the person who looks at this, it's a glass metal instrument with wires, reflectors, screws, lamps, and push buttons. Someone else can look at a set of symptoms and go, oh, behind that is this kind of a problem. Here's where things need to be actually dealt with. And so when we hear Job saying, for the thing I greatly feared has come upon us, and what I dreaded has happened to me, most people look at that and it's kind of like the guy who looks at the apparatus and has no idea it's an X-ray machine. When you unpack, when you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, what we see there is Job has this humbling insight that when his mind is being controlled by fear and dread, he's working against his own best interests. And in admitting he has a dysfunctional mind, Job is opening a space for profound healing. He stepped into that powerful, life-changing admission that he is, in those moments, mentally incompetent. In effect, what Job is owning is the fact that he has a particularly pernicious form of mental illness. Now, we've all said, or I maybe shouldn't say that for everybody, but most everybody that I know, when I say, yeah, things are really crazy, they're like, yeah, they're really crazy. And somebody from that crazy would say to me, Well, Michael, if hostility and fear are a sign of mental illness, that means everybody's mentally ill. That's right. Virtually everybody in the culture not virtually, literally everybody in the culture that's functioning out of hostility or fear, in the moments when they're doing that, are mentally ill. It is the most common set of symptoms, and that set of symptoms works down into physiology and creates literally every so-called physical disease that mankind experiences. That's my offering. That's the X-ray machine. That's what, when you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, which was being addressed. Look at this. 2,000 years ago, this man Yeshua says, eyes to see and ears to hear. He's saying you've got to have the brain cells. Here's this philosopher, 2,000 years later, Hansen, and he's saying, the experience you've got is going to determine what you observe. Einstein, the theory you have determines what you can see. If you can recognize that when you're functioning out of hostility or fear, and I'm saying this for myself personally. I came across, you maybe were on the radio show, and it's, I don't know, probably it's a year or more ago, and I acknowledged that one of the things that I was saying to myself regularly when my hostility or fear came up was, this is my mental illness. When you can own that, you can start to change it. But if you can't own it, you can't change it. Because the belief, the blame game, puts cause outside of you. Again, we're back to the whole definition of denial in this work. So the huge first step in healing is the admission that there's a disorder going on here. And when we really unpack Job's insight of the eyes to see and the ears to hear, and unpack everything he's saying, he's starting to understand his part in causing these terrible events and repeated generational patterns in his life. I mean, Job plainly and emphatically tells us that the feared and dreaded outcomes in our lives begin in our own minds, and when we live in a mind fueled by fear and dread, we are limited to a life of conflict, pain, suffering, and seeming hopelessness. When thought complexes that result in fear and or hostility or dread go unchecked, we're in trouble. And when you realize that that's the problem, then you realize that you're sitting atop an awesome power that has the ability to produce results in the world. Wow, what an amazing discovery. Duh. Let's go back 2,000 years ago. Here's this man Yeshua, and he even comes through in the Greek. And he says it, ask and you receive. Duh. Many are so steeped in their religions, in their belief systems based in hostility or fear, that they can't even hear what their own scriptures are telling them. And most people just read right past Job's nugget, as though it wasn't even there. And many people point to religions and blame them. Well, let's say you've got a perfectly sound, fact-based, scientific religion, and you hand it to someone with unresolved hate, or intimidation, or abuse. Let them play with it for 20 years, and guess what you're going to have? You're going to have a religion that's based in hate and abuse and fear and trauma. It's not about the religion. It's about the people playing in it. So notice we've got examples of hate in all factions of religion, or in different factions of every religion. There are the hate-based Christians, there are the hate-based Jews, there are the hate-based Muslims, there are the hate-based, every one of them. I mean, even the Buddhists, who are all about, compassion, have those who turn to being warriors. And so the objective of this work is to get back to a mind, and Jeanie shared that story about the rose and the butterfly, to get back to a mind that's based in its original fueling system. Now that, if you look at, just take the example, take any political squabble that's going on right now. Let's just look, without getting political, let's just look recently, what happened the last month or so in Congress. How many different realities do you suppose, as all that family squabble went on, how many different realities do you suppose were in need of healing? Well, my offering is, there are 525 members of Congress. That would mean that at least 525 of those having at least one aberrant reality at a minimum is what each person involved in that squabble had to work out. How many of them did you hear, if you were listening to interviews, and again, I'm not being political, I don't care whether it's Republican, Independent, Democrat, whatever it is. How many of them did you hear come out of one of those contentious, raging, it sounds like it almost came to fisticuffs several times. How many did you hear come out and say, I was sitting there and this debate was going on, and I realized that I had so much rage in me that I had no idea that I had that much rage in me and what I need to heal. Anybody come out of that squabble with their hand up saying, I have something to heal here? I haven't heard anybody. And these are the people that are running our country. You'd think that in order to move to that level of a society that's got 200, almost going on 250 years under its belt, would have a system set up that you couldn't get into that body, that governing body, without at least proving that you're mentally competent, that you're not mentally ill. My offering is every moment at which any person is functioning out of any hostility or fear, they're mentally incompetent. And they do crazy things. You and I and everybody else. So what's the solution? Do your work. Step up to the plate, acquire some tools, and change the game inside of you. Job's simple statement is really clear. He's informing us that when we live in fear or dread and apply it to a fantasized outcome in the mind, we're literally setting the blueprint for the events that will be delivered by life to us. Who's going to stand up and say, I did that yesterday. I've got work to do. I've been doing that all my life. I've been raging at people. There's an interesting film out there. I think we talked about it a few weeks ago when we rewatched it. It's called If I Could Only Imagine. It's very powerful. It's a true story. It's a song that was written by this young man who was horribly abused as a kid and gets away and escapes his home. And after coming back and seeing his abuser has changed, and it's interesting because he's got all this time, he's writing his music, he's performing in churches, he's doing the whole churchianity thing. But watch the film, and they're just portraying a true story. He comes back and he hasn't healed one damn thing in his life or his mind. But his father has. His abuser has. And he's just as abusive. He's playing the power person dynamic out with his father, even as his father, ineptly, but from at least a partially healed space, is coming forward trying to make some sort of amends. And the kid goes nuts. and does exactly what his power person did to him. And his healing doesn't happen until the active presence of love of his Father is there, supporting him. And you watch the healing happen that didn't happen in all the years of his being out there in churchianity. There's a work to be done. It's a magnificent work. It's beyond comprehension, the potential of it. When we can get somebody's attention, someone who's living in that hostility or fear game. And fear can look like, a pattern. There's a book about it. It's called Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And how once a pattern is established in childhood, and it doesn't matter what the pattern is, whatever, and again, tie this in with Job's insight, that which I feared most, that's which I dreaded. And you look at what happened to the child at 4, and the child at 9, and the child at 13, and the young man or the young woman at 22, and the young man or the young woman at 30, and the middle-aged man or woman at 40, and in the end result, and when you realize the power you have, this is the power you have. Notice if you've seen one of those "Why is this happening to me again" in your life. Notice how much power you have when applied to a fantasized negative outcome that was perhaps acquired in the first 3 or 4 years of your life, or perhaps is genetic and was simply reinforced there. Notice how powerful you've been at recreating that over and over, getting literally in some cases thousands of people to come together to help to create your "Why is this happening to me again?" That's a lot of power. What do you suppose happens when you do the work of cleaning up your mind and you apply that power to creating healing in the world? Energetically, what do you suppose happens? If you've got the energy to reach out, I've worked with people and they say, I can see how this whole, industry failed, and it was just because I know that I'm a failure and it always fails and always falls apart on me. You caused the whole industry to fail? You had the power to do that? Wow, that's pretty amazing. What do you suppose happens if you can forgive that energy in you? Forgiving meaning remove the pattern energy that you hold, probably from many generations. What do you suppose happens when you change that one? And then you incarnate the presence of love. Jeanie was doing a still point session back, it's probably, I'm not even sure, but Jeanie had looked up the radio show where he talked about it about a year or so ago. And in that still point session, she'd been told that there were going to be 5 measures of healing. It's a conversation that's come up recently because Jeanie realized it was a chapter that she left out of her book and that she needed to put in the book. And in fact, we were talking with one of our musician friends, Julie Matthews, and she had given Jeanie some input on that radio show back then, and we were talking to her yesterday that what she was told, in essence, and Jeanie, please correct me if my language is a little off. I haven't refreshed this in my mind recently, but it basically was told that she would be incarnating in her body-mind unit as a human being, as love, in 5 measures. Sweetie, would you like to pick that up and share a little bit more of what you're working on with that? Just seemed very appropriate here because to get the idea that it's a process to really incarnate fully.
Right. And hold on, I'm looking for the list here. Well, when I first got the message, you'll expand in 5 measures, it was like, okay, what does that mean? And of course, Julie explained that a measure in music is like the bars that tells a composer how many beats, and what tempo and all that. And that 5 measures is very unusual, in that the 5th is usually like a rest or a pause or a flow to take one set into the next. And so that made sense, that would be part of it. The number 5 is, if you look at different things, it's the number of humanity. It's a symbol of balance. It's a symbol of courage and life lessons. It is also the symbol of God's grace. And the list of I was later, that was all I was given that first time. And then later, I was told what those 5 measures were. And I'm trying to find that list. I'm not at the computer where I'm typing the book. Okay. First one was awareness, consciousness and realization, remembering the loss of being, and returning to love. Felt snatched from love, deep sorrow and terror, be aware of my breathing, and the name of God, which is the breath. The second measure is trust. And so each of these are things that I needed to work through, or still need to work through, to get to the total expansion. Second one was trust, to trust God, to trust Michael, to trust myself, to trust my parents. The third one was will instead of willpower, and how much time I had spent in my life trying to control and force things to happen through willpower. And that the 5 smooth stones, that was used to destroy Goliath, and Goliath is the monster in your life. But the 5 smooth stones is choice, will, intuition, imagination, and enlightened perception. And so those are faculties that need to be strengthened. The 4th one was safe, to remember mentally, emotionally, and to remember in my body, and to move from survival to living and thriving and dreaming. This one is a big one, and will take facing every atrocity that I went through and every false belief I took on about myself, including those that I have forgotten or pretended didn't happen. Danger and threat happened repeatedly, and turn to was to go into freeze mode. It would turn on. And to realize it's safe to let go of coping strategies and to feel what's real, and that it's safe to sleep again. That has something to do with not sleeping well at night. And then the 5th one is incarnation, to re-enter my body. And so I don't have a lot of notes on that 5th one yet. I haven't arrived there yet. But anyway, that was very powerful. And it's what's required to be able to expand. And you said something, I think it was one of the last couple of days, about the kingdom of heaven, that it's also the community of expansion, or the kingdom of expansion.
Yeah, it could be the idea of heaven being expansion is within. It's a proper translation in Aramaic for that statement from Yeshua: the kingdom of heaven is within us, within and around us. Yes. And it's interesting, we're at a time in geological terms, in astronomy, where they've got this new telescope that's just expanding our view of the universe, like, to use a phrase, light years, like just so far beyond what we had even conceived. And I think that is, to me, that's a symbol. The opening of that is a symbol of the opening that's happening on the planet for human beings. And I believe that we are designed to be able to comprehend what that opening is, to comprehend what all of that is and means together as we incarnate as human beings and start to function not out of our insecure, angry, sad, afraid, hurt, little non-being minds, non-being self, but really truly to incarnate as we were originally created and to live as these magnificent creatures called human. And we're here to support every mind, heart, and being on the planet claiming their place
in that really recognizing who you are. And that old song, What's It All About, Alfie? Really being able to understand what it's all about. So that's why we're here, and that's what the tools are about. And Jeanie, maybe, or I'm sure you probably already have put some of that stuff in your notes, so people have access to it. You know, the philosopher I was speaking about had spoken about the person who used the example of the person, you know, the level of knowledge you have determines what you can observe, or the theory, as Einstein says, what you can observe. And that's a good example that, you know, somebody who doesn't know anything looks at this apparatus and goes, oh, well, some wires and some lights and some switches. Oh, okay, there's a plug on it. And then someone else goes, oh, it's an X-ray machine. With the eyes to see and the ears to hear, they understand what they're looking at. We've all been looking at life forever. But if we are stunted by the hostility and fear-based brainwash of captains and kings, if you've been stunted by that, then we can only observe to the limit of our own minds. You know, Paul talked about, be transformed by the healing of your mind. And to remove the thorns of blame and pain from our minds is the objective of this work. And when you remove the thorns of blame and pain from your mind, you remove the disease-producing energies in your body. When you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear that, you go, oh, okay, that's what healing's about. Oh, that other stuff is just a way of suppressing symptoms that I don't like, and it's called treatment. And, go for the treatment. It saves lives. But it's not healing. In many cases, it's the very thing that mitigates against healing. I personally think that any practitioner of medicine who does not lay healing alongside of treatment is locked into malpractice. And it's time for us to expand, to become holy, not H-O-L-Y, W-H-O-L-Y. Understand and be able to work on every level from, what you allow your eyes to look at, from what you allow your digestive system to ingest, to what you allow your skin to touch, what you bring into your lungs, to what you bring into your mind and what comes out of your mouth. You don't become holy until you understand and integrate all of those things fully, totally, and completely. So, that's what it's all about, Elfie. And Miss Jeanie, have we got anybody out there in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room? If you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, in our control panel, our calling number is 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you're listening to the show directly. And then if you push 1, raise a hand in the control panel, and Jeanie will introduce you by your phone number, and we will be having a conversation. So how can we support you? What's on your mind? Push 1. Let's talk about it.
We have a bunch of people on the switchboard, but no hands up. Like I said earlier, some people waited until the last minute, and we were already talking to someone else, and you didn't get a chance to get your question in. So nobody has their hand up right now. Press 1. You're first in line, and we can address your question or your comment. We have a hand up. It's area code 314. I believe this is Doug.
Yep, it is.
Hey, welcome, good sir. How are you?
Thank you. Great show. Hey, both hours, really. I'm calling because I'm sure something good will come out of it. I just
Okay.
it always does, and I'm. How am I? Well, yesterday was a very, very difficult day for me because there was a reality in my head that was greatly distressing me, that was a deeper thought or belief that I may not be able to ever restore the relationship that I've been so attached to. And some part of me has been believing that, somehow, sometime that will be fixed. And I found that I was just really triggered by that. And so when Jeanie was talking about the rose and butterfly, it's like that's applicable to this. I feel like I feel like in my physiology that what was going on for me yesterday, among other things, was just the recognition of how my whole being, my emotion, my mind, my body, believes, loves, wants, feels that being in loving relationship is the most valuable, most powerful, beautiful, inspiring, productive, supportive, and joyful, productive way to live. And therefore, I most desire it above all else. But what I see is that, and this is one of the things Dr. Tim was saying too, is that which we most resist is that which holds our greatest lesson. And so keying off of that, it's like I feel like I most resist not having that, and the thought of not having that. So much so that I don't want another relationship because my love for that person is so great. My commitment to that one person is so great. Even though I know I could create one and have value, part of that whole thing is that then I think, oh, well, that is an opportunity cost then for your life, that you are in that place. And I feel like it just goes on. I don't know if I should keep talking or not, because it's
Have you done any worksheets where you cancel the goal for that relationship to be reconnected?
Yes, absolutely.
And where does that lead you when you do that worksheet?
Well, it leads me to all the reasons why, back to a safe haven, insecurity, guilt for failure in my marriage, other relationships, lots of more engagement with my girls in their life, all failed relationships, and back to childhood need for security, like when mom was gone or missing, when I came home, my life was in jeopardy kind of thought. Dad died and was gone, safety was gone. I'm just reading from some of the notes from the worksheet, one of the worksheets here. And
right.
So I see all this insecurity is tied to needing a relationship, and therefore I'm committed to not having one. Basically, to getting the lesson that's needed here, which is how to recognize my own self as divine love, trust, safety, not to do the geographic cure. In other words, I've done that in the past. Okay, this relationship ends, so I'll go find another one. But by doing that, I avoid the real healing or the real lesson of empowerment that's needed, and I don't want to do that again. But I'm so that's the answer to that question. It's like I feel it leads me to that. Well, I also surfaced that I think my father died. Why? Because he could not accomplish the family of love and relationship he desired. He did not feel the flow of love he felt. He felt the burden instead, the guilt, the failure, and he wanted He wanted me to succeed. You know, he always said that his mission, and this really resonates in my heart, was to, and that the mission of every parent should be to create something that their children can build on to do better than they did, and to have a better life than they had, and to transcend his accomplishments by standing on his shoulders, you know, coming out of the life he came out of, achieving what he achieved, and then achieve more. And another thing that came up for me is one of the last commissions that he gave me when he was very ill, which resonates guilt, you know, to some degree, was take care of your treasures. That's what he could see, that our relationship was, you know, my relationship with my wife at the time was in jeopardy, and he said to me, take care of your treasures. And that's...
Breathe. Let's just be with that and breathe into it.
And I think maybe that's part of, you know, I feel like I failed this relationship. I failed again. You know, it's like I didn't give her what she felt she needed enough. Well, anyway, yes, breathing. So, yeah, there's a lot of grief about that, about failing that charge, or interpreting that I failed that charge, you know, that he gave me.
And it sounds like you still haven't resolved your failure within your former marriage inside of your own mind.
Yes, that's one and the same with this. Yes. You know, and I can justify the situation. I've done that 1,000 ways, the way that I entered the marriage, the circumstances surrounding that, you know, on and on and on. But the bottom line is that even though I was making a conscious effort to keep what I thought was appropriate commandment and instruction, I wasn't able to do it because I felt like I hadn't willingly chosen to enter that marriage, and among other things. And the bottom line is that even though I did try, I mean, she decided to make the divorce. I went back a year later, and we tried this again, and she said no. And that's how I justify the failure. But the bottom line is my failure to accept, embrace, love, and be happy with her during the marriage is what led to that. So, yeah.
And it sounds like, if you just breathe into that, that it simply replicated what your father did. And he died over it. According to what I understood you to just say.
Yeah, well, I feel like
he attempted the same project, failed, and as a result died.
Essentially, I think so. That was for the first time ever, my thought. You know, I always felt like he worked himself to death, or he gave it for his family, but to see it in this way, that his grief or his failure to achieve what he wanted caused his body to degrade, you know, caused him to get the illness, die. You know, I didn't ever think that thought until yesterday. But it seems reasonable to me because I know that he wanted something much greater for his family and for his marriage, you know, than he was able to achieve. And so, anyway, that's speculation on a lot of
So here would be my input.
Okay.
And let's put it in the context of the story that you've heard me tell many times and Jeanie read earlier in the show about the rose and the butterfly.
Yep.
I suspect it probably never occurred to your father, and perhaps has not occurred to you, that you cannot have the rose until you are the butterfly, or vice versa. My offering would be, what I hear you saying is your father, okay, so let me unpack it. So what I hear you saying is that your father pursued something external and failed at it because he thought his success would be in something external. And what I hear you saying is that you only consider yourself a success, at least in relationship at this point, when you can recapture or reestablish this relationship that you're committed to.
That's very, very true. Very, very true.
So my offering would be that you're putting the cart before the horse. You know, there's a great man 2,000 years ago that said, seek ye first. What did he say to seek first? The relationship out there? The something for the family? What's it that he said he suggested you seek first?
Kingdom of Heaven.
Seek to incarnate as a human being. Bring your being to earth. My offering is the first order of business. And if we haven't done that, then any other goal that we set is going to ultimately fail. Because everything else that you could possibly, well, as he said, you do that and everything else is made unto you. You'll be made whole. So when we become distracted by something out there, it's sort of right in line with the whole idea of denial, dissociation, projection, and now we're trying to get somebody or something out there to help us to achieve the goal that we hold. And it's not a worthy goal until you've achieved living as a human being, living as the created essence of love that you are. Like, you know, if in all of your getting, whether it's relationship or money or success or power or fame or whatever it is, if in all you're getting you don't get being, then you aren't.
Oh, yeah,
okay. So the order of business I would offer would be that you truly cancel all of those goals for something external. And heal that mind that is separated self from itself. Because you're putting, my offering would be that you're putting all of your energy into a result that you don't yet have the cause for. And the cause of everything that you want is to recognize and incarnate as who you are as a created human being. And the outer world distracts us in all sorts of ways. And you found yourself a really noble distraction, would be my offering. And my suggestion would be that you truly cancel your need, truly do the forgiveness process around that, and go back to what your primary purpose is. And that if you have a goal that when you load it in your mind reflects to you as pain because it has not been achieved, that's your next piece of work. that make sense?
Yes. Would you define cause? You said you said you were putting energy into a goal that you don't have cause for.
You're attempting to achieve a result. Yeah. What I'm offering is that you're attempting to experience a result that you don't have the cause for. And the cause will be living as the created essence of Doug as a human being. And what I hear you doing is trying to produce the result, doing everything you can to produce the result without having the cause. And my offering is it's a genetic pattern, at least if what you say about your father is accurate, because he tried to have the same result with an external, something about his family, and your take was that literally holding to that, as opposed to fulfilling his primary purpose, killed him.
I think so.
Breathing
I think that's correct. Yeah. Yep. Yeah.
So it's an old family pattern, and it'll probably be your 77 times 70 worksheet issue.
Right. Yeah.
So the next hit that I get is, I'm sure with all the work you've done with us over the years, they've been around when we've done the letting go of the attachments exercise.
Yes.
So my invitation would be to do that exercise, and if you'd like, we can guide you through it, and everybody who's listening, if they've got a situation in their lives, could do the same exercise. It's a simple one, but it's very profoundly powerful, that you do that around your relationship with your former wife. And when you can let loose of what sounds to me like the guilt and failure of that, you're going to remove the interference patterns for a lot of things that you've been working on creating.
I feel that truth because I can feel energy moving in my body when you say it. Now, what I thought you were going to say was that letting go of attachments exercise for my relationship with Diane, which felt immediate resistance come up. I feel much less of that relative to my wife. It's my former wife, because that's so long ago. I nonetheless feel that what you said must be true because I feel it, and it's the guilt
so there's
part.
A starting point.
Very much the guilt.
Go ahead.
Part, the guilt part is very much alive.
Right. So and that would become a block to creating. That's if you carry that in your relationship file, then any relationship you attract is going to have a match to that energy, or there won't be an attraction. As long as you hold that within you, guilt around what you didn't achieve in that relationship, then through resonance, a relationship that you're going to attract is going to have a matching bag of garbage to that, which will be the circumstance or the situation that will bring that up in order for you to heal it. That's the gift of healing through relationships.
Which is why I would feel guilty then about not having this one succeed, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. It would just tend to carry on, yeah. So what if Doug were in relationship to guilt, what if Doug were a totally and completely guilt-free being, having healed all forms of guilt ever held within his field and within his family system?
Yeah. Well, I think he would be more bold and more willing to do and offer things, among other things. That's the first impulse that comes to mind. And, of course, more vital and free. Yeah.
Okay. So holding the space for that result. And with our timing, we're down to less than a minute now. So there is not the space to do that exercise. However, if you're available tomorrow, we could open the show with it. Oh, actually,
okay.
Pardon me. Actually, we'd have to wait until Thursday. I'm not going to. We're going to do a recorded show tomorrow, so I won't be available. But if you'd like, we can open the show on Thursday and step into that exercise for yourself and for everybody. And
we're not doing a recorded show tomorrow, I don't think.
Actually, we haven't had a chance to write, but we haven't had a chance to speak. There's another situation that's come up, sweetie.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll plan on Thursday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, noon Central Time, and we'll step in. And for everybody who's ready to do it, let's be, think about a situation where you find yourself with some emotional attachments, and we're going to do a very powerful, though simple exercise for releasing those attachments. And it's an exercise that I've just seen make deep, profound changes in people's lives. It only takes 2 or 3 minutes, but so.